Absolute panic. I think back in those days we were all very young. I was 23, 24, and really we had little idea about what we were about to embark on, and it was it was a crazy, wonderful time of a lot of young people. I think all of us were under the age of 30, taking on this huge experiment that nobody had ever done before, and it was a wild time. I can remember in true silver fashion, it hadn't stopped raining for about 3 weeks. It was wet, and so we tried to do an outdoor event in front of the old radio station at the 23 Stewart Street, and yeah, a very, very exciting time. The audience had no idea what was coming, and while we had obviously planned it and we'd done the best we could, we had little idea where we were going with it in truth. And it's transformed into what it is today. And what a journey it has been. Well, no, it's like any pioneering organization. It's always tough, and you have little idea what you're letting yourself in for. And of course, we were private. We had to pay our own bills. We had to figure out how we were going to survive first, and then as we were able to grow and we could gain experience, we could see the opportunities that were coming up and the lessons learned from that first radio station in FM96. We could see the demands of the audience. They wanted more radio stations. They wanted us to concentrate our programming around the target markets. That we eventually ended up with the 5 radio stations, which seems to have turned out to be the perfect formula for Fiji. And of course, then we took those lessons to Papua New Guinea later in the 90s. But all of those lessons started in that day, July 5th, 1985, where we took what we learned then and have taken it forward since then. Well, I think the first thing is that never underestimate the power of youth and enthusiasm and particularly allowing younger people to break a few rules, which is what we were allowed to do in those days, and we did. We broke a lot of rules in terms of broadcasting and just the approach to doing business. As I said, we were a very young group, and so allowing people the space to do that is really critical. The second thing was, of course, that we first learned that the one rule you can't break is you've got to pay the bills, and we learned very early on that we couldn't waste money, and that became a core part of our philosophy, learning how to use money wisely and in the best possible way. So that's probably rule number 2. And then rule number 3 is never stop learning and never stop changing. And that's the thing I'm most proud of at FM96, is that after 37 years, we now in the 3rd and sometimes 4th generation of families listening to this youth radio station. And I have to remind some of my friends of my age group who are now complaining about their grandchildren listening to FM96 that, that's what they were doing back in 1985. And it has remained, FM96 is particular as a brand, has remained true to that target market, that younger urbanized target market in Fiji, and it remains part of the culture. And they keep breaking the rules, and that's all going to be always going to be part of FM96. Well, just understand that FM96 is about communicating with the young people of Fiji, and we always want to be their voice. And that's why we're constantly changing. And of course, as we age, sometimes we struggle with coming to terms with that. And that's why we started all the other radio stations, to cater for that, to allow a wider audience of people to enjoy the style of radio that we introduced to the market back on July 5th, 1985. Yeah, I think that's... that goes back to those lessons I've just talked about, which actually started in '85, and we've never lost that spirit, and I think it holds us true to this day. Embracing change, understanding that change is coming, understanding that we've got to look at new technologies not necessarily as a threat but as an opportunity, but at the same time staying in touch with what our audiences are doing, and communicating with our audience on whatever way possible. So if it's going to be through FM radio, that's great. If it's going to be through social media, we've got to be there. If it's got to be online, streaming, whatever form that it might take going forward, we've got to be there with our brand and our approach. And that's still very much part of what FM96 and CFL is about today, and PNG FM for that matter in Papua New Guinea. Yeah, well, I think that's what's kept us going. Is that we've had, and when you think back at the challenges that we've faced over the last 37 years, whether they're man-made or or the subject of climate change or whatever, we've had every possible challenge across all our markets, of course Papua New Guinea included. So, but the one thing that has held us strong and held us together is that from a very early stage we built a bond with our audiences, and it's a real thrill for me today when people still come up to me in the street and say thank you for being part of their lives, and that is quite an emotional thing for me. I'm amazed that people who come to me and say, I remember where I was when FM96 started. It was a really important part of my growing up. It was an important part of me discovering about the world, and all of these things really hold strong. And I think that's actually at the heart of it's that relationship with each individual listener that we have, which is the one that holds us. It certainly provides the team with a huge amount of support, and it keeps us going, even though there's lots of people and things which get thrown in our way, and that's what gets us up in the morning, is just making sure that we can be there for our audience.